The war with Iran is now in day 150. There have been countless stops and starts and memorandums of understanding and openings and closings of the Strait of Hormuz. Let's bring back Dr. Sahar Razavi, a professor of Middle East Studies at Sac State and an expert on Iran. Doctor, good to have you here. So we had you on the 2nd of March. The war was like 3 or 4 days old. We're now 5 months into this. What has changed since the early part and where we are today?
Strategically, a few things have changed. One is that with the waves of assassinations of top political and military leaders in Iran, there have been replacements of those leaders by younger and more hardline members of the IRGC, even where there was civilian leadership before. So right now we have an Iran that is a little bit more intransigent, a little bit more hostile, a little bit less willing to compromise than perhaps they were before. At the same time, we have skyrocketing prices, global pressure on the economy. The Strait of Hormuz is one out of several different factors that are playing into this kind of pressure cooker that's building up.
There have been some wars that the U.S. military has absolutely emptied the barrels on. There was North Vietnam in the 60s, Afghanistan in the 90s. The results were mixed. Is Iran going to be like this?
You know, I always hesitate to make predictions, but I think we're in a different era now than those wars. I don't think Iran can be a forever war for the United States. It's a very, very different animal than Iraq was, than Afghanistan was. But I do think that the United States has fundamentally misunderstood Iran, both kind of strategically and logistically and culturally. So the United States believes Iran to be in a much more difficult and challenging position than Iran believes itself to be, which makes coming together at the negotiating table very difficult. Iran believes itself to be in a much stronger strategic position than the U.S. thinks it's in.
So do you see any way that there's any type of a surrender or of any kind by the Iranian government where they just wave the white flag, we declare victory, the Strait of Hormuz is open indefinitely, there's no nuclear weapon of any kind developed by Iran?
I think the waving the white flag is very, very unlikely.
Okay.
Now, Iran has already said several times in various iterations, including very formalized deals, that they don't want to pursue a nuclear weapon, but that was before this war, and that was before the 12-day war last year. Could that change? Possibly. But what I envision probably happening is that Iran will use that as a bargaining chip so that they can frame it as a concession where it's actually not, they're not conceding anything that they hadn't already conceded many times before. As far as waving a white flag, as I said, Iran is a much different animal than the other countries in the region that the United States has been at war with. That's extremely unlikely and growing more and more unlikely by the day as we move closer to the midterm election, as Iran, as I've said in other interviews, it has prepared itself for a really long time for a war of attrition where it can outlast the United States' political will to engage in this confrontation. So we're not going to see surrender in that way, but we will probably see some kind of a deal that both sides will frame as a victory for themselves.
Well, we thought that with a memorandum of understanding, which has been bombed away.
Right,
yeah.
Literally.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your perspective.
Anytime.